Well, hello everybody. This is Julia from Just One More Card, and I have the honor today to be a guest designer for Whimsy Stamps. And I have some really fun projects for you this month using stamps and dies from that company. So I'm using a fairly new clear stamp set. It's called Snappy Birthday, and it has these adorable critters. When I saw these critters, I was like, I need to have them because they're just so cute and so much fun to color up. I also have a panel of basil marshmallow card shop cardstock. It's very difficult to say. This is not your typical Copic friendly or alcohol marker friendly cardstock. I'm using my favorite things, licorice ink, the hybrid ink, because that works well with Copic, so it doesn't smear. And the reason I'm using this paper and not a typical Copic paper is that I wanted to experiment with blending. Now with this paper, it's not a watercolor paper, it's not a Copic friendly paper, but it's more from its texture and feel, it's more towards a type of watercolor paper. Let's try to explain it like this if you haven't used this paper yet. And as you can see, when you have a stroke there if you put down a stroke of color on this paper, the stroke isn't completely like sharp edged, but it becomes fuzzy. And that is because on this type of paper, like on watercolor paper, if you would use the markers on watercolor paper, they feather. That means that the ink seeps off to the side a little bit, so that you don't have like a sharp line, you have a fuzzy line. I hope this makes sense. Now, while this can be a little bit challenging when you're coloring stamped images where you don't want to go beyond a stamped line, it also has its upsides, and the upside is that you can blend very easily because the colors literally seep into each other. You don't have a sharp border of where one color ends or not, and you can see this here especially well. I used a reddish color. All the colors will be listed in the video description or on my blog. And I'm going over it with an orange, and it just blends into each other without even a lot of effort from me. Now you have to be careful when you go over the same area very intensely, like very often, because then the moisture might actually make the color feather much further off to the side. So you have to experiment with the paper you have. If you have this cardstock, just give it a try. You could use watercolor cardstock as well and just experiment there. It's simply something that you can do differently when you work with alcohol markers. And by the way, like the first image, I don't even know what the English name for this is. I colored mostly with Shinhan Twin Touch brush markers. I have a review I did of these markers on my blog. Just you can search for it and find it there. And they're also alcohol markers. They're basically like the Copics, and it's just something different. Like there is, if you want to have lots of control and like no feathering at all and very sharp lines, then of course use marker-friendly paper, no questions asked. Like Neener, Solar White, or the Simon Says Stamp, ultra heavy cardstock, and there's all kinds of papers that you probably know of and that you can use. Using a different paper like this Basil Marshmallow Shop cardstock, or maybe Ranger watercolor paper or any kind of watercolor paper, it's just something different. It's a different technique. It gives you a different look as well to your coloration. I find that on Copic friendly paper, I have a more like a sharper look. It's less loose. With this one, it almost looks a little bit like a painting because you don't have these sharp lines and edges. So it absolutely depends on the kind of look you're going for. And actually, it looks like the transition between the color looks relatively edgy here, but that's the setting of the camera. Like in real life, the transition is much, much smoother. It's just always very difficult to capture this properly on camera. Now I finished coloring all these three critters, and I fuzzy cut them. Took me a while, but I did. And then I used this die by Pretty Pink Posh to die cut a film strip. I'm going to save those little rectangle pieces for later for another project, but I'm just going to use this strip for now. Now what I did is I put some foam tape behind this strip, and I'm just putting it on the other side of this panel where I die cut it from, because why waste paper? And I'm trying to make sure that I will have equal space on each side. And of course, that's not the case yet for 2 sides. So I'm going to use my trimmer to trim this down. I could have measured it, but I like to live on the edge. Like, why not get the heart pumping, when the danger is that you could ruin the entire project, where it would just cost you like 10 seconds to measure it. But no, not me. I love taking risks. So here I am taking my risks. And then I adhered it to some pattern paper. I'm on a pattern paper kick recently, just don't ask me why. And this is going to be my panel, and I'm going to adhere this onto my card base, just like this. And now I can put my critters in there. There they are. I put some foam tape behind them, just fitting them into these tiny little openings. And there they are. I'm not done yet, don't worry. Just, of course, I have to put a sentiment on the card and add some embellishments. The sentiment is from the same stamp set, the Snappy Birthday. There we go. And then, of course, I had to use some sequins and seed beads by Pretty Pink Posh, but I'm gonna do this later, obviously, not yet. I'm using the Wink of Stella here, and I'm very generously coating these critters with Wink of Stella, like really generously. It's a new pen, so it's very, very glittery, and I had so much fun putting that glitter down, because I figured, this is going to be a birthday card for a kid, and you can see the glitter here, hopefully. This is going to be a birthday card for a kid, so why not go all out? Why not go nuts? You can see that I adhered some of the seed beads and droplets and probably also sequins. Maybe I also did sequins by Pretty Pink Posh. And then when I was done basically with the card, I grabbed my glossy accents and added some over those party hats and the eyes of this. I think it's a crab, because I just don't know. Just a fun effect. I think glossy accents just gives a very, very fun effect. So this is the finished card. And here are some close-ups. I hope you can see the glitter, like everything that looks kind of white and speckly, that's the glitter. It looks really awesome in real life. And the glossy accents, when dry, just adds a wonderful sheen and of dimension. You can see it a little bit on the head here. And I hope you can see here how nicely the blending worked on these critters, on this paper, and it allows for a really nice and dimensional effect. I was really happy with how this card turned out. So, as I said, I'm a guest designer for Whimsy Stamps in July, and I'll have more projects for you this month. So if you don't want to miss out, subscribe to my channel, and you'll have a new video in your inbox next week. Cheers!